Shalom, everybody. Rabbi Edelstein here with a last-minute installment of Rabbi Ian 3, brought to you, as always, by MEOR DC. Please find us on Facebook or at MEORDC.com and learn about all of our programs. Okay. Well, this week's Torah portion is called Chayei Sara in the book of Bereshis, Genesis, and we have a lot of death in this Torah portion. The death of Sara Imenu, Sara, our matriarch. That the portion's named after that, the first verse, which mentions that she passed away after a good and righteous life of 127 years, but she passes away. And we have the death later on of Abraham, the death of Yishmael, Abraham's son with Hagar. There's a lot of death in this Torah portion, but it's interesting that the name of the portion, which comes from the first verse, is Chayei Sara, the life of Sarah, because that first verse mentions the years of her life. But there's a deeper meaning. It wouldn't be random that the Torah portion, which perhaps more than any other one focuses on death of great people in that early generation, is called Chayei Sara, the life of Sarah, because Judaism never did and never does and never will believe that physical death is the end of the story. It's hinted at. The idea of life after this life, that the soul lives on, is hinted at in the Torah, not said explicitly, which we'll talk about in a second, but we see it clearly hinted at and more in this week's Torah portion, because when it describes Avram's death, it says, and Avram expired and died in a good old age, mature and satiated, and he was gathered to his people. Now, Avram was not born where his people were born, back in Mesopotamia, or he was not buried there, so it doesn't mean he was interred with his people. He was buried in the Maras HaMachpelah in Hebron. Gathered to his people means his soul, his neshama, his eternal self and essence lived on, moved on from this life into the next phase of our existence. I want to read to you the beautiful words of Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, great commentator in the 1800s. He says this term of being gathered to one's people, which is repeated again in this portion by Yishmael, we can point to it with pride, he writes, against those people who declare that, quote, in the Old Testament, the dogma of immortality is not taught, that is a prerogative of the New. Rabbi Hirsch says certainly it was not taught in the Old Testament because there was no necessity to teach it. It was a commonplace understanding and idea. It wasn't a belief in immortality that had to be taught. Just like God is not taught in the Torah. The Torah begins, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't say in the beginning, you shall believe there is a God. He goes on to say that, and he points out that the famous verse that I guess often Christians quote, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns unto God. That's not from the New Testament, but from Koheles, from Ecclesiastes. And then he goes on to say, it was only when sects, S-E-C-T-S, were affected with un-Jewish ideas, and they commenced to deny the immortality of the soul, that the doctrine of immortality began to be preached and taught. It was not taught in the Torah. It was simply taken for granted, like the existence of Hashem. The essence of who we are is our neshama. Human life, and we don't talk a lot about that because we have a job to do in this world, to elevate this world and to elevate that neshama, to make ourselves that we can live on with the greatness that we've created through our own actions, our mitzvot, our choices. We do live on our neshama. It's the portion about the death of Sarah and the death of Abraham, but only in a physical sense. They live on, the righteous live on, and may you have a wonderful Shabbos. And with our observance of Shabbos, one of the great things in Judaism to elevate ourselves in order to make ourselves throughout our lifetime greater and greater people, the people that we will, the souls, the people that will be forever and ever, for eternity. Have a great Shabbos. I'm sorry I went over 3 minutes. Gosh. Okay, got to repent. Have a good one.